News surfaced today. Here's a story from Ed Morrissey. Has the State Department released a smoking gun in the Hillary Clinton email scandal in a thread from June 2011? Hillary Clinton exchanges emails with Jake Sullivan, then her deputy chief of staff and now her campaign foreign policy advisor, in which she impatiently waits for a set of talking points. When Sullivan tells her that the source is having trouble with the secure facts, Hillary then orders Sullivan to have the data stripped of its markings and sent through a non-secure channel. And it's quoting from the email, if they can't, turn into non-paper with no identifying heading and send non-secure, unquote. The article goes on to say that's in order to violate the laws of handling classified material. There's no other way to read that demand. Regardless of whether or not Sullivan complied, this demolishes Hillary Clinton's claim to be ignorant of marking issues, as well as strongly suggests that the other 1,000+ instances where this did occur likely came under her direction. Fox News also noticed the email this morning, although they don't have a copy of it linked, and it's quoting, however, one email thread from June 2011 appears to include Clinton telling her top advisor, Jake Sullivan, to send secure information through insecure means. In response to Clinton's request for a set of since redacted talking points, Sullivan writes, they say they've had issues sending secure facts. They're working on it. Clinton responds, if they can't, turn it into non-paper with no identifying heading and send non-secure. Ironically, an email thread from 4 months earlier shows Clinton she was surprised that a diplomatic officer named John Godfrey used a personal email account to send a memo on Libya policy after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. The article goes on later. Did those talking points get illegally transmitted on Hillary Clinton's order? If so, then Sullivan may find himself in legal trouble too. Paragraph G, quoting from the law, makes it clear that, quote, each of the parties to such conspiracy shall be subject to the punishment provided for the offense which is the object of such conspiracy, unquote. This explains why more than 1,000 pieces of classified information have found their way into Hillary Clinton's unauthorized and unsecured email system, and why the markings have been stripped from them. Hillary herself apparently ordered the code red, so to speak. In an update, the author says there are a few people wondering whether the TPs or talking points in question in this thread were classified in the first place. There are a couple of points to remember in that context. Unclassified material doesn't need to be transmitted by secure fax. If the material wasn't classified, Sullivan would have just faxed them normally. Ordering aides to remove headers to facilitate the transmission over unsecured means strongly suggests the information was not unclassified. On top of that, removing headers to avoid transmission security would be a violation of 18 U.S.C. 793 anyway, which does not require material to be classified, only sensitive to national security. Also, State did leave this document unclassified, but that's because there isn't any discussion of what the talking points cover. They redacted the subject headers with B5 and B6 exemptions, invoked to note that the FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act demand, doesn't cover the material. Ordering the heading stripped and Sullivan's apparent reluctance to work around the secure fax system makes it all but certain that the material was classified at some level, and Hillary Clinton knew that. Just breaking news of interest. But, Mr. Speaker, matter of grave concern continues to arise, stemming back from a man who was born in Eritrea named Abdurrahman Al-Amoudi. And this is from discoverthenetworks.org. Mr. Al-Amoudi immigrated to the United States in 1979. That would be the same year, Mr. Speaker, you will recall, that radical Islam declared war on the United States, attacked our embassy in Tehran, took over 50 Americans hostage, and held them for over a year. That same year, that year, 1979, is the year Mr. Al-Amoudi he came to the United States, and then he became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1996. In 1981, he founded the Islamic Society of Boston. It's not in this article, but I've also seen the documentation of his founding, and it's, I think, worth noting that the Islamic Society of Boston that Mr. Al-Amoudi founded the two mosques in Boston area, one of which produced the Tsarnaev brothers, where they worshiped and learned more about Islam. This article says from 1985 to 1990, Mr. Al-Amoudi served as executive assistant to the president of the SAR Foundation in Northern Virginia. In 1990, Al-Amoudi founded the American Muslim Council. The following year, he established the American Muslim Armed Forces and Veterans Affairs Council, whose purpose was to, quote, certify Muslim chaplains hired by the military, unquote. During the 1992 presidential election cycle, Al-Amoudi courted both the Democratic and the Republican parties. When Bill Clinton emerged victorious, Al-Amoudi increased his donations to Democrats. He went on to serve the Clinton administration as an Islamic affairs advisor and a State Department, quote, goodwill ambassador, unquote, to Muslim nations. In 1993, the Defense Department certified Al-Amoudi's American Muslim Armed Forces Investment Council as one of two organizations, along with the Graduate School of Islamic and Social Sciences, authorized to approve and endorse Muslim chaplains. Among the chaplains endorsed by Al-Amoudi's group was James Yee, who eventually would be arrested in 2003 on suspicion of espionage. Mr. Speaker, it's very reassuring that this man arrested on suspicion of espionage here in the United States was certified by Mr. Al-Amoudi's group. Well, in March 1993, Al-Amoudi disparaged the federal government for the, quote, flimsy, unquote, evidence it had used as a basis for arresting Mohammed Salameh, a suspect in the World Trade Center bombing of February 26 of 1993. Salameh was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison on what apparently Mr. Al-Amoudi thought was flimsy evidence. Goes on, in 1995, Al-Amoudi helped President Clinton, interesting verb that, helped. Al-Amoudi helped President Clinton and the American Civil Liberties Union develop a presidential guideline entitled, quote, Religious Expression in Public School, unquote, which established a legal justification upon which the ACLU would file lawsuits that restricted Christians or Christmas celebrations and removing nativity scenes from public schools. Al-Amoudi made numerous controversial statements during the 1990s and early 2000s, including in 94, he said, Hamas is not a terrorist group. I have followed the good work of Hamas. In 1996, March, Al-Amoudi said he was honored to be a member of the committee that is defending Islamic Association of Palestine, or IAP, founder Musa Abu Marzouk, who in 1997 would be deported from the United States because of his Hamas-related activities. I really consider him to be from among the best people in the Islamic movement. That's a quote from Al-Amoudi. Al-Amoudi added, Hamas and I work together with him. In December of 96, as Al-Amoudi continued to work with the Clinton administration to find good Muslims to work in the government, Al-Amoudi told a meeting of the IEP, quote, I think if we were outside this country, we can say, oh Allah, destroy America. But once we are here, our mission in this country is to change it. You can be violent anywhere else but in America, unquote. In October 2000, Al-Amoudi attended an anti-Israel protest outside the White House, where he proudly declared himself a supporter of Hamas and a supporter of Hezbollah. And apparently there's video of that. In 2000, Al-Amoudi literally began making regular trips to Libya, where he met with government officials to discuss strategies by which they could create headaches for Saudi Arabia. In January 2001, Al-Amoudi attended a conference in Beirut with leaders of numerous terrorist organizations, including Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad. In June of 2001, Al-Amoudi was a guest speaker at a Northern Virginia conference where senior Islamic militants from throughout the Middle East were gathered. Many of the speakers denounced the Zionist entity that aims to destroy the Muslim Ummah, or community. That same month, Al-Amoudi attended a briefing on President Bush's faith-based initiative, and the White House invited him to the post-9/11 prayer service on September 14th at the National Cathedral in Washington. In September 2003, British custom officials arrested Al-Amoudi at Heathrow Airport as he was returning from Libya with $340,000 in cash given to him by President Muammar Gaddafi to finance a plot involving two UK-based Al-Qaeda operatives intending to assassinate Saudi Crown Prince, later King Abdullah. Al-Amoudi was subsequently extradited to the United States, and in October 2003, he was arrested at Dulles Airport on charges of having illegally accepted $10,700 from the Libyan mission to the United States. With Al-Amoudi in custody, federal authorities released a transcript of a telephone conversation in which he had lamented that no Americans had died during Al-Qaeda's 1998 bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Kenya. He recommended that more operations be conducted, like the 1994 Hezbollah bombing of a Jewish cultural center in Buenos Aires, in which 85 people died, and clearly articulated his objective of turning America into a Muslim nation. Al-Amoudi was indicted not only for his illegal dealings with Libya, but also for tax evasion and immigration fraud. He ultimately pled guilty to and was a financier who had funneled at least $1 million into the coffers of that terrorist organization. He also acknowledged that he had pocketed almost $1 million for himself in the process. In October of 2004, Al-Amoudi was sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. During the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development trial of 2007, which examined evidence of the Holy Land Foundation's fundraising on behalf of Hamas, the U.S. government released a list of 300 of the Holy Land Foundation's unindicted co-conspirators and joint venturers. Al-Amoudi was named in that list. In addition to the affiliations listed above, Al-Amoudi has been at various times a board member of the American Muslims for Jerusalem, the American Task Force for Bosnia, board member for the Council for the National Interest Foundation, a director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, has very open access to the highest officials, including the president. They're the ones that got Langley to call off a 2-day seminar for law enforcement on radical Islam and got the rules changed so people that were American experts on Islam could not talk to any government, U.S. government group about radical Islam unless they got approval from people like those that CARE approved of. So CARE. We're talking also about a named co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial in which convictions were obtained for principals in the Holy Land Foundation for supporting terrorism. And I would humbly submit that had Eric Holder not become Attorney General and Barack Obama not become President of the United States, many, if not all, of those co-conspirators would have been then indicted and tried as supporters of terrorism. Instead, a new president, a new attorney general came in, and instead of being indicted, tried for supporting terrorism, as they were named, and the district federal court in Dallas and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said in opinions there was plenty of evidence to support that they were co-conspirators. Well, the new administration dropped the matter, and these people became helpful to the administration in advising on Islam. It also notes that Mr. Al-Amoudi was a founding trustee of the Fiqh Council of North America, board member of Interfaith Impact for Justice and Peace, a regional representative for the Islamic Society of North America, which was a named co-conspirator for supporting terrorism, a board member of Mercy International, president of the Muslim Student Association of the U.S. and Canada, a board member of the Somali Relief Fund, secretary of the Muslim Brotherhood-affiliated Success Foundation, and director of the Taliban International Aid Association. In fact, in an article back in 2004, Andrew C. McCarthy noted that Al-Amoudi was sentenced today to 23 years imprisonment for terrorism financing, false statements on his naturalization petition, and tax violations. The sentence imposed by Judge Claude Hilton of the U.S. District Court in Alexandria, Virginia. Al-Amoudi was influential in the American Muslim circles and thus in Washington. He participated in several political charitable organizations, founding the American Muslim Council, was an enthusiastic supporter of Hamas and Hezbollah. The federal government permitted him a key role in selecting the Islamic clerics who were minister to the military or in the military and in the prison system. Over the years, moreover, he occasionally traveled the globe as an emissary of the U.S. State Department. As we know, he also traveled to Libya, engaged in financial transactions with the Gaddafi government, and collected hefty sums, including the 340,000 seized from him when he was arrested last year, which were designed to be routed back to his causes in the U.S. without the knowledge of American authorities. All of those activities violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, imposes terrorism-related sanctions prohibiting unlicensed travel to and commerce with Libya. Parenthetically assert here that it had to be very convenient for Mr. Al-Amoudi, this convicted supporter of terrorism, to be working for the State Department as he went to different countries and apparently continued to conspire to support terrorism as the State Department funded his travel on its behalf. But also found was this article, author was Brian Blomquist, and the date is June 27 of 2003, and it's an article about the esteemed U.S. Senator Charles or Chuck Schumer, entitled "Schumer Wants Fanatical Imams Rooted Out of Jails and Armed Forces." The article says, militant Muslim imams are preaching a distorted, hateful form of Islam to U.S. soldiers and federal prisoners, creating a, quote, dangerous situation, unquote, Senator Charles Schumer charged yesterday. Schumer said the problem is that the Pentagon and the Federal Bureau of Prisons select Muslim imams on the advice of Islamic groups in the grip of the fanatical Wahhabism strain of the religion. Quote, while the potential Wahhabi influence in the U.S. Armed Forces is not well documented, these organizations have succeeded in ensuring that militant Wahhabism is the only form of Islam that is preached to the 12,000 Muslims in federal prison, unquote, Schumer said at a Senate hearing on extremist Wahhabi Islam, which has been linked to terrorism. In February, the New York prison system barred its top Muslim chaplain from its prison facilities after the imam, Warith Dean Umar, said the 9/11 hijackers should be treated as martyrs. Quote, the imams flood the prisons with anti-American, pro-Bin Laden videos, literature, and sermon tapes. The point of prison should be to rehabilitate violent prisoners, unquote. Mr. Schumer is so right. The article goes on, the Bureau of Prisons used the Graduate School of Islamic and Social Sciences, which is under investigation for possible funneling of money to terrorists, and the Islamic Society of North America, which has board members with terror links, Schumer charged. American Muslim Foundation President Abdurrahman Al-Amoudi said his organization had no role in advising the Pentagon. Al-Amoudi said he formally gave the Pentagon advice on selecting imams, but they pushed me out. Well, we know that that was not until right before the British government arrested Al-Amoudi and then provided, apparently, the U.S. government plenty of evidence to show that Al-Amoudi was supporting terrorism. That's why I was so shocked, since the FBI got information from Britain, gathered their own information that they've been gathering at least since '91 on radical Islamic beginnings here in the United States, that during the Bush administration, the FBI would have a partnership outreach program with the Council of American Islamic Relations, of which Mr. Al-Amoudi was a board member. CAIR was a named co-conspirator for supporting terrorism, which the courts have said there's plenty of evidence to support that they are. And while the FBI had gathered such evidence, they were outreach partners with this organization, CAIR, named as a co-sponsor or a co-conspirator with the Holy Land Foundation. This article from WND, Pentagon admits chaplains from Muslim Brotherhood group, published March 6, 2014, by Aaron Klein, says the U.S. Army and Air Force has selected 2 Muslim chaplains from a program run by an Islamic group closely tied to the Muslim Brotherhood that was named by the Justice Department as an unindicted co-conspirator in a scheme to raise money for Hamas. WND broke the story in 2011 that the controversial Islamic Society of North America, or ISNA, is the official endorsing agency for the U.S. Armed Forces Muslim Chaplain Program. WND further reported that year that the Muslim Chaplain Program was founded by a terror-supporting convict, while the Army's first Islamic chaplain, who is still serving, has been associated with a charity widely accused of serving as an al-Qaeda front. Now ISNA has announced that 2 of its former applicants for chaplaincy were selected to serve on active duty in the United States Army and Air Force. Quote, the significance of this news is that the Department of Defense has not selected an ISNA-endorsed chaplain for active duty in over 15 years, said the ISNA press release. ISNA Chaplain Services Director and Islamic endorsing agent Abdul Rashid Muhammad said in a statement that the 2 chaplains selected for active duty are ready to serve Allah and the country, making the statement in that order. After speaking by phone with both soldiers, it was more clear that both were eager and ready to serve Allah and their country. Quote, may Allah bless our new chaplain candidates and their families as they prepare for new challenges and opportunities in the Army and Air Force Chaplain Corps, unquote, said Muhammad. While the new chaplain's ties to ISNA has received more attention in the conservative blogosphere in recent days, missing from the conversation is the larger partnership between the U.S. military and not just ISNA, but also other terror-tied groups. In fact, Muhammad himself, the ISNA endorsing agent, has been tied to a group accused of serving as an al-Qaeda front. Since the Muslim Chaplain Program's inception in 1993, ISNA, and by the way, parenthetically, since 1993, which was the year in which we had another terrorist attack, that being the first attempted bombing, or the first bombing of the World Trade Center in an attempt to get down and kill tens of thousands of Americans. Anyway, since the Muslim Chaplain Program's inception in 1993, ISNA has been the official endorsing agency of the new chaplains. In 2005, ISNA initiated a yearly Muslim Chaplain Conference that includes leadership talks for chaplains in both the military and the U.S. prison system. Discover the Network's notes that ISNA, through its Saudi government-backed affiliate, the North American Islamic Trust, reportedly holds the mortgages on 50% to 80% of all mosques in the United States and Canada. Quote, thus the organization can freely exercise ultimate authority over these houses of worship and their teachings, unquote, states Discover the Networks. ISNA was founded in 1981 by the Saudi-funded Muslim Students Association, which was founded primarily by, or partially by, the Muslim Brotherhood. The two groups are still partners. WND previously attended an MSA, or Muslim Student Association, event at which violence against the U.S. was urged by the speakers. Quote, "We are not Americans," unquote, shouted one speaker, Mohammed Fahid, at Queensborough Community College in 2003. Quote, "We are Muslims. The U.S. is going to deport and attack us. It is us versus them. Truth against falsehood, the colonizers and masters against the oppressed, and we will burn down the master's house," unquote. Wow, Mr. Speaker, with that kind of comments coming at their meetings, it's so wonderful that principals from these organizations have such close ties with the current leadership in the country, in the White House, in the State Department, in the Justice Department. This article goes on. ISNA was named in May 1991 Muslim Brotherhood document, quote, "an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America," unquote, as one of the Brotherhood's like-minded organizations of our friends, that's in quotes, who shared the common goal of destroying America and turning it into a Muslim nation, according to Discover the Networks. Islam scholar Stephen Schwartz describes ISNA as, quote, "one of the chief conduits through which the radical Saudi form of Islam passes into the United States," unquote. According to terrorism expert Stephen Emerson, ISNA, quote, "is a radical group hiding under a false veneer of moderation," unquote, that publishes a bi-monthly magazine, Islamic Horizons, that, quote, "often champions militant Islamist doctrine," unquote. The group also, quote, "convenes annual conferences where Islamist militants have been given a platform to incite violence and promote hatred," unquote, states Emerson. Emerson cites an ISNA conference in which al-Qaradawi was invited to speak. He further reports that in September 2002, a full year after 9/11, speakers at ISNA's annual conference still refused to acknowledge Osama bin Laden's role in the terrorist attacks. Also, ISNA has held fundraisers for terrorists, notes Discover the Networks, after Hamas leader Musa Marzouk was arrested and deported in 1997. ISNA raised money for this group. The group also has condemned the U.S. government's post-9/11 seizure of the financial assets of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. ISNA, meanwhile, has an extensive relationship with the Obama administration, which recently announced it is open to diplomacy with the Muslim Brotherhood. And Mr. Speaker, this is where I have to say, having visited with leaders in the Middle East, Muslim leaders who are actually friends of the United States, not in official open meetings, but when we get in private, they ask the question, why does your U.S. administration continue to support the Muslim Brotherhood? Do you not understand the Muslim Brotherhood has been at war with the United States since 1979? And you've got friendly Muslims that want to help you. I would submit that the current president of Egypt is one of those. And yet you are insistent on helping the Muslim Brotherhood that is at war with the United States. Oh, not with violence yet, but they claim they're getting so much accomplished in taking over the United States without violence that they don't want to use that yet. That will come later if necessary, but right now they're doing such a good job as advisors and in important positions in the administration that they should not be using violence. Well, back to the article. ISNA, meanwhile, has an extensive relationship with the Obama administration, as we've said. The relationship began even before Obama took office. 1 week before last year's presidential inauguration, and again, keeping in mind this article is from 2014. 1 week before last year's presidential inauguration, Said National Director of ISNA's Office for Interfaith Community Alliances, was part of a delegation that met with the directors of Obama's transition team. The delegation discussed a request for an executive order ending torture. ISNA President Mattson represented American Muslims at Obama's inauguration, where she offered a prayer during the televised event. Mattson also represented ISNA at Obama's Ramadan dinner at the White House. In June of 2009, Obama senior aide Valerie Jarrett invited Mattson, the president of ISNA at the time, to work on the White House Council on Women and Girls, which Jarrett leads. Yeah, that's what you want. You want someone who supports the Muslim Brothers' idea that women don't have rights. They have no business showing their face in public or driving or having property rights. Yeah, that's what you want, advising the White House on women's issues, for heaven's sake. The article goes on. 1 month later, the Justice Department sponsored an information booth at an ISNA bazaar in Washington, D.C. Also that month, Jarrett addressed ISNA's 46th annual convention. According to the White House record, Jarrett attended as part of Obama's outreach to Muslims. In February, Obama's top advisor on counterterrorism, John Brennan, came under fire for controversial remarks he made in a speech to Muslim law students at an event sponsored by ISNA at New York University. In the speech, Brennan, who later became CIA director, stated that having a percentage released by the U.S. return to terrorist attacks isn't that bad, since the recidivism rate for inmates in the U.S. prison system is higher, according to Brennan. He also criticized parts of the Bush administration's response to 9/11 as a, quote, reaction some people might say was over the top in some areas, unquote. That, quote, in an overabundance of caution, we implemented a number of security measures and activities that, upon reflection, now we look back after the heat of the battle has died down a bit, we say they were excessive, okay? Unquote. WD reported Brennan stated at the ISNA organization event that the Obama administration is working to calibrate policies in the fight against terrorism that assure Americans are never profiled. Speaking at the question and answer session, Brennan, who now head of the CIA, declared himself a, quote, citizen of the world. We need to be looking at ourselves as individuals. This is CIA Director Brennan. Not the way we look or the creed we have or our ethnic background. I consider myself a citizen of the world, unquote, Brennan said. Brennan told the audience the Obama administration is trying to, quote, make sure that we as Americans can interact in a safe way, balance policies in a way that optimizes national security, but also optimizes the opportunity in this country never to be profiled, never to be discriminated against. Yeah, that's right. Sure, if you hate America and you want Americans' Western lifestyle and freedoms destroyed, you want women subjugated, we shouldn't profile people just because they want America destroyed as part of their religious beliefs. That kind of thinking gets a nation in trouble, and thus we are in trouble. Well, this article published this week, January 5th, 2016, from Jennifer Hickey, Ripe for Radicalization, Federal Prisons, Breeding Ground for Terrorists, say experts. So here we are, 2016, substantiating the statements that Senator Chuck Schumer made back in 2003 that our prisons have been, for years now, a breeding ground for radical Islamism. And under both Republican and Democratic administrations, we have allowed people who have been named and for which the federal courts have said there's plenty of evidence to support that they are co-conspirators in financing terrorism and supporting terrorism. We've allowed them to pick imams, approve imams, put imams in our military and in our prison. So is it any surprise that 13 years after Chuck Schumer raised that issue, that since nothing has been done about it, that the federal prisons are a breeding ground for radical Islamists? This quote from Representative Stephen Fincher, my friend from Tennessee: over the years, our federal prisons have become a breeding ground for radicalization. And that is supportive of what Chuck Schumer said years ago. And in fact, this article by Carol Brown, December 5th of 2014, AmericanThinker.com, prisons are a breeding ground for jihadists. Muslims comprise 15% of the prison population. This number far exceeds the percentage of Muslims in the general population. It is 18 times greater, to be exact. So there are 18 times more Muslims in federal prison than the percentage of Muslims in the general population. That raises issues and questions, problems. Put another way, there are about 2.4 million Muslims in the United States. 350,000 of them are in jail. That means more than 12% of Muslims in America are incarcerated. Reports on the number of prisoners who convert to Islam vary and are framed in different ways. Some sources estimate 40,000 prisoners per year convert. Others put the numbers closer to 135,000 per year. Some posit that 80% of inmates who, quote, find faith while in prison convert to Islam, unquote. One thing is for sure: the majority of those who convert to Islam in prison are black, with as many as 1 in 3 black prisoners converting. The number of Hispanic prisoners converting to Islam is also on the rise. These numbers are staggering, and the implications are serious, as will be addressed further in the article. There are numerous reasons why conversions to Islam are skyrocketing. Jails, many prisoners feel angry, disenfranchised, and yes, even victimized and wronged by society. Many harbor a deep disdain for America. They are therefore prime targets for recruitment to religious ideology that shares many of these same attitudes. In addition, Islamic teachings are often framed as a noble code of ethics to live by. Case in point, the Nation of Islam is the largest prison ministry. I'm sure they're meaning that the largest prison ministry in the United States. Mr. Speaker, this is going on as I speak. It's going on for the 13 years since Chuck Schumer brought it up in the Senate, and we don't appear to have learned any lessons from this. My friend Dana Rohrabacher is pushing that we invite the President of Egypt, President Al-Sisi, to come speak to a joint session of Congress. I was talking to Chairman Royce about it. He believes it would be a good idea. Our majority whip, Steve Scalise, just met with President Al-Sisi in Egypt. I'm thrilled he did. He is a Muslim leader that understands the Muslim Brotherhood is a threat to freedom in Egypt and America and in Europe. It's time we did something about it to protect ourselves. You don't have to profile Muslims, but profiling those who are studying the radical Islamists like Qutb, like his booklet Milestones that Osama bin Laden said radicalized him or helped. And yet this administration will not allow our Justice Department, our intelligence departments and agencies, our State Department, people at the White House, will not allow them to be educated on radical Islam. So of course you're going to be admitting a woman who takes a man's name that denotes a terrorist Islamic jihad from hundreds of years ago, Tashfeen Malik. Our Homeland Security, we've run off people like real patriots who are brilliant on the issue of radical Islam, like Philip Haney, run them out. And the message is clear: you better not study radical Islam, you better not know anything about radical Islam in Homeland Security, because if you do, we'll run you off if we don't do something worse. Thank God Philip Haney had such a clean record. They were looking for anything. Our country is in trouble. There are people that want to destroy it. And it's ridiculous that anybody still has to say, we know all Muslims are not terrorists. Of course they're not. But it is ridiculous to continue to allow and even encourage radical Islamist imams in our prisons to transform prisoners into additional radical jihadists that are going to go off like a bomb, figuratively, literally, at some point down the road. We also have got to look at our immigration policy when it comes to continuing to allow people like Al-Amoudi that hate America, that consider himself a person who could help bring about the global caliphate, a person who is financing terrorism, to have his wife come and have a child in America. Morsi, the former president of Egypt, before he started trying to radicalize that country and taking power unto himself as if he were a dictator, his wife had a child here. You think that child was being brought up to love America? You think Al-Amoudi's child was being raised to love America while parents were scheming to terrorize it? Anwar al-Awlaki, about which my friends on both sides of the aisle discuss the propriety or impropriety of having a president just issue an order to kill an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki, a man who led staffers in Muslim prayers right here, Capitol Hill staffers led in prayer by a man that ultimately the Obama administration, the president himself, considered so dangerous, he had to take him out with a drone strike in Yemen because he was so dangerous to the United States. We couldn't even risk arresting him later. He had to take him out with a bomb strike. How was he an American citizen? Well, his parents, who raised him to hate America, came to America on a student visa, studied here, had Anwar al-Awlaki, took him back to Yemen, taught him to hate America, and he became so dangerous that even President Obama felt he had to order a strike on an American citizen without a trial, without due process, take him out with a drone because that American citizen, an American citizen only because his parents came here on a visa, was too dangerous to do anything else. It's time we started protecting our homeland, and we need an administration that will do it. And in closing, Mr. Speaker, let me just add, the reports have been that the Obama administration used the NSA to spy on members of Congress to help it keep the Iran deal, the Iran treaty, in play. Mr. Speaker, we have got to get to the bottom of that. If it turns out that our president was unconstitutionally spying on members of Congress, I don't care if they were all Democrats or Republicans, I don't care. They may have been Democrats. It doesn't matter. If he was spying on members of Congress using the NSA or any other government agency to spy on members of Congress, we need to find out if it happened, and if he was, he needs to be removed from office, period. Otherwise, we can't save the nation. I hope and pray those allegations are not true. I hope and pray that the President of the United States did not have the NSA spying on members of Congress to help him with the Iran deal, help him as he was supporting the biggest supporters of terrorism in the world. I hope and pray that's not true. I hope